The massive stone doors of the Bloodline chamber had remained sealed for 3,000 years, their ancient runes glowing with a cold blue light that warned away all who dared approach. Standing before them now, Kira Shun felt the weight of every ancestor's disapproving stare from the portraits lining the corridor. Her mixed heritage marked her as an outsider in the eyes of the Valorian Empire's nobility. Despite her mother's royal blood, the chamber lay deep within the heart of Mount Eternus. Carved from living rock by the first Valorian settlers who had fled Earth's destruction centuries ago, legend spoke of the Guardian within, an ancient being that chose each generation's rightful heir to the throne. But the bloodline laws were clear, only pure Valorian blood could enter. Kira's human father had tainted that purity, making her an abomination in the eyes of the High Council, Emperor. Theron Valores lay dying in his golden bed 3 levels above, his life force slowly draining away as the Empire fractured around him. His legitimate son, Prince Aldrich, commanded the military with brutal efficiency, but lacked the wisdom to unite the scattered colonies. The Emperor's younger brother, Duke Vex, controlled the merchant guilds and hungered for power with a cold ambition that made even his allies nervous. Both men had attempted to enter the chamber in recent weeks, seeking the Guardian's blessing before the Emperor's death. Both had been violently expelled by the ancient security systems, their bodies bearing burns that would never fully heal. The chamber's rejection of the 2 most powerful men in the Empire had sent shockwaves through the noble houses. Kira had grown up in the shadow of the palace, her mother's disgrace keeping them confined to the servant quarters despite their royal connection. Queen Liana had been the Emperor's beloved sister until she fell in love with a human diplomat. During the peace negotiations with Earth's refugee fleet, their marriage had been celebrated briefly before the conservative faction rose to power, implementing the purity laws that made their union illegal. The young woman pressed her palm against the cold stone, feeling the ancient technology humming beneath her touch. The runes flickered, seeming to recognize something in her genetic code that had been hidden for 23 years. Her human heritage carried secrets that neither the Valorians nor the humans fully understood, remnants of Earth's lost civilization that had evolved beyond what either species remembered. As news of the Emperor's failing health spread through the palace, the various factions began positioning themselves for the coming struggle. The military prepared for Prince Aldrich's ascension, while the merchant houses quietly transferred their allegiances to Duke Vex. Meanwhile, the outer colonies watched nervously, knowing that civil war would leave them vulnerable to the approaching Zirathi invasion fleet. The Zirathi had been humanity's ancient enemy, the reptilian species that had driven both humans and Valorians from their original worlds centuries ago. Intelligence reports suggested their massive war fleet would reach Valorian space within 6 months, making the succession crisis a potential death sentence for both species. Kira understood the stakes better than most, having spent years working in the Imperial Intelligence Division despite her unofficial status. Her analytical mind and unique perspective had made her valuable to certain progressive elements within the government, though always from the shadows. She had seen the classified reports about the Zirathi advance, and knew that only a united empire could hope to survive the coming storm. The corridor around her remained empty as the noble houses gathered for another fruitless council session. They would argue about bloodlines and ancient laws, while their enemies prepared to destroy everything their ancestors had built. The irony wasn't lost on her. The very purity they obsessed over might be the weakness that doomed them all, standing before the chamber doors. Kira made her decision. The laws forbade her entry, but the laws had never faced the reality of extinction. If the Guardian truly chose based on merit rather than genetics, then perhaps her mixed heritage was exactly what the Empire needed. The human refugees had brought innovation and adaptability, while the Valorians provided stability and tradition. She placed both hands against the massive doors and spoke the ancient words her mother had taught her in secret, the ritual phrases that had been passed down through the royal bloodline for generations. The runes flared brighter, and deep within the mountain, something ancient and powerful began to stir. The stone groaned as mechanisms that had slept for millennia awakened, and the massive doors slowly began to part. Blue light spilled into the corridor, carrying with it the scent of ozone and something older than memory. Kira stepped forward into the unknown, leaving behind everything she had ever known for a chance to save everything she had ever loved behind her. The palace continued its political games, unaware that their carefully constructed world was about to change forever. The Guardian waited in the depths, and with it, the truth about what it really meant to be worthy of leading an empire on the brink of war. The chamber beyond the doors defied every expectation Kira had formed during years of studying ancient Valorian texts. Instead of carved stone and primitive altars, she found herself in a vast spherical space, filled with floating platforms and streams of pure energy that danced through the air like living light. The technology was far beyond anything either humans or Valorians possessed, suggesting the Guardian's origins reached back to civilizations that predated both species. Crystalline formations jutted from the curved walls, each one pulsing with data streams that flowed like rivers of information. The air itself seemed alive, responding to her presence by shifting colors from deep blue to warm gold. This was no mere testing chamber. It was a repository of knowledge that could revolutionize their understanding of the universe. At the center of the space, a figure materialized from the dancing energies. The Guardian appeared as neither fully human nor Valorian, but something that incorporated aspects of both species while remaining fundamentally alien. Its form shifted constantly, sometimes appearing as an elderly sage, other times as a young warrior, and occasionally as something that hurt to look at directly. "You should not be here." "Child of two worlds," the Guardian spoke without moving its mouth, its voice resonating directly in Kira's mind. "The bloodline laws exist for reasons your people have forgotten. Yet you stand in my presence without being destroyed. This is unexpected." Kira fought to maintain her composure as the entity's attention pressed against her consciousness like a weight. "The Empire is dying while our enemies gather strength. The bloodline laws have become chains that bind us to ancient prejudices instead of guiding us toward survival." The Guardian circled her slowly, its form occasionally flickering to reveal glimpses of vast machinery embedded in the chamber walls. "Your human ancestors carried gifts they did not understand. Your Valorian blood bears the echo of decisions made in desperation. The combination should have been impossible, yet here you stand." Images suddenly flooded Kira's mind, memories that belonged to neither her nor any living being. She saw the original Valorian homeworld burning under Zirathi attack, the desperate flight that brought them to this system. But there were other images too, older ones showing humans and Valorians working together long before either species remembered the partnership. "We were allies once," she gasped as the visions faded. "Before the Exodus, before the wars. The histories have been altered. Truth has many layers, young one. The bloodline laws were created not from prejudice but from necessity. The genetic mixing of your peoples created complications. Most offspring died young or suffered worse fates. Your survival to adulthood was itself extraordinary. The chamber around them shifted, revealing hidden laboratories where scientists had worked frantically to understand the genetic incompatibilities between species. Kira watched horror unfold as experiment after experiment failed, until one desperate researcher discovered something that changed everything. "The Zirathi corruption," the Guardian explained as new images showed the true horror of the ancient enemy. "They do not merely conquer worlds, they remake all life to serve their will. Your species learned to resist through genetic modifications that saved you but made you incompatible with each other." Kira understood now why her very existence defied expectations. The modifications that protected humans from Zirathi conversion techniques also prevented successful interbreeding with Valorians. Her birth should have been impossible, her survival beyond explanation. "Yet I live," she said firmly. "And others like me exist in the refugee camps. The genetic barriers are weakening, or strengthening in ways your people do not recognize. Show me, child of two worlds. Show me what you carry that makes you unique." The Guardian's command triggered something deep in Kira's genetic code. Energy flowed through her body as dormant sequences activated, revealing modifications that went beyond anything the historical records contained. Her human heritage carried not just resistance to Zirathi influence, but active countermeasures that could potentially turn their own weapons against them. The chamber's walls lit up with new displays showing the approaching Zirathi fleet in stunning detail. Their ships were massive biological constructs that grew rather than being built, each one carrying millions of converted slaves from conquered worlds. But now Kira could see weaknesses in their design, vulnerabilities that neither purely human nor purely Valorian genetics could have detected. The question remains, the Guardian said as the displays faded, whether one person can unite two species who have forgotten how to trust each other. Your people's division makes them vulnerable in ways they cannot comprehend. Above them in the palace, the political situation deteriorated rapidly as news of the Emperor's death finally broke. Prince Aldrich immediately declared martial law while Duke Vex mobilized his merchant fleet, effectively splitting the empire in half. The outer colonies began declaring independence rather than choosing sides in what appeared to be an inevitable civil war. Kira felt the weight of expectation settling on her shoulders like a physical burden. What must I do to prove myself worthy of leadership? Worthiness cannot be proven through trials alone. It must be demonstrated through impossible choices made under pressure that would break lesser minds. You must unite your people not through conquest but through understanding, showing them that their survival depends on embracing what they fear most. The Guardian gestured toward a section of wall that transformed into a tactical display, showing fleet movements throughout the system. Kira could see Prince Aldrich's military forces positioning themselves for orbital bombardment of Duke Vex's strongholds, while refugee ships from the outer colonies fled toward neutral space. The Zirathi arrive in 147 days. Your people have perhaps half that time before their civil war makes effective resistance impossible. Even working together, victory would require sacrifices neither species is prepared to make. Then I'll make them understand, Kira said with growing determination. I'll show them what we're fighting for and what we'll lose if we fail. The Guardian's form solidified into something almost human, almost Valorian, but clearly neither. Then go, young heir. Take with you the knowledge you have gained and the burden of leadership that comes with it. The chamber will not admit you again until you have proven yourself in the crucible of war. As Kira turned to leave, she carried within her genetic code the keys to weapons that could turn the tide against the Zirathi invasion. But first, she had to survive the political infighting that threatened to destroy the empire before the real war even began. The palace erupted into chaos the moment Kira emerged from the Bloodline chamber. News of her unauthorized entry had spread through the noble houses like wildfire, creating a scandal that overshadowed even the Emperor's death. Prince Aldrich's royal guards surrounded her immediately, their energy weapons powered and ready, while Duke Vex's agents watched from shadowed alcoves, waiting for their moment to strike. "Seize the pretender," Prince Aldrich commanded as he strode into the corridor, his military uniform pristine despite the Empire's crumbling state. "She has violated the most sacred laws of our people and must face execution for her crimes." But as the guards moved forward, something unexpected happened. The ancient runes that decorated the palace walls began to glow with the same blue light that emanated from the Bloodline chamber. Technology that had been dormant for centuries suddenly activated, recognizing genetic markers that Kira now carried within her modified DNA, the palace's artificial intelligence. Dormant since the founding era, spoke for the first time in 3,000 years. Authorization recognized. Bloodline successor identified. All personnel will comply with Imperial succession protocols. Duke Vex stepped from the shadows, his calculating eyes taking in the changed situation with professional interest. Fascinating. It seems our half-breed cousin carries more authority than we suspected. Perhaps we should hear what the Guardian told her before we decide her fate. The political implications hit the noble houses like a seismic shock. If the palace systems recognize Kira's claim, then the bloodline laws themselves might be more complex than anyone understood. Several minor houses that had remained neutral in the succession Crisis suddenly found themselves reassessing their positions. Lady Corvina, head of the Intelligence Guild, emerged from the crowd of onlookers with a datapad in hand. My agents report Zirathi scout ships have been detected at the edge of our system. The invasion fleet will arrive weeks ahead of our previous estimates. We need unity, not civil war. Prince Aldrich's hand moved to his sidearm, but the palace's defensive systems tracked his motion with mechanical precision. Ancient weapon turrets extended from hidden recesses in the walls. Their targeting systems focused on anyone showing hostile intent toward the newly recognized successor. You cannot seriously consider supporting this abomination. Prince Aldrich snarled at the assembled nobles. She represents everything weak about our people: compromise, dilution, the abandonment of the principles that made us strong. Kira stepped forward, her voice carrying new authority that seemed to resonate through the palace's enhanced acoustics. The principles that made us strong are the same ones that are about to get us all killed. The Guardian showed me the truth about our history. Humans and Valorians were allies before the Exodus. We survived by working together, not by maintaining artificial separation. She activated the knowledge downloads the Guardian had given her, projecting holographic displays that showed the assembled nobles exactly what they faced. The Zirathi fleet was massive beyond imagination, each bioship capable of converting entire worlds into slave colonies. Traditional military tactics would be utterly useless against an enemy that thought in terms of geological timescales. "Look at their ships," she commanded, highlighting weaknesses in the alien designs that only her hybrid genetics could detect. They've adapted to fight pure humans and pure Valorians separately. They have no defense against combined tactics that use both species' strengths simultaneously. Duke Vex studied the tactical displays with growing interest. "You're suggesting we integrate human refugees directly into our military structures? The logistical challenges alone would be staggering." "The refugee camps contain some of humanity's greatest engineers and scientists," Kira replied. "They've been developing technologies in isolation that could revolutionize our defensive capabilities. But they need Valorian manufacturing capacity and resource networks to make their innovations practical." Admiral Thane, commander of the Orbital Defense Fleet, stepped forward with obvious reluctance. "Even assuming we could overcome the political obstacles, we have less than 90 days before the Zirathi arrive. Integration on that scale would require time we don't have." Kira activated another set of Guardian-provided files, showing manufacturing techniques that could accelerate production beyond current limitations. The Guardian preserved knowledge from the original alliance. "We can build hybrid technologies that leverage both species' capabilities, but only if we start immediately." The noble houses began murmuring among themselves as the implications became clear. Supporting Kira meant abandoning 3,000 years of carefully maintained social order. But opposing her meant facing the Zirathi invasion with a divided military and outdated tactics that had failed against the aliens repeatedly throughout history. Lady Corvina broke the tense silence with a question that cut to the heart of the matter. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Concrete steps, not philosophical ideals. First, immediate amnesty for all political prisoners in both factions, with rapid integration of their skills into defense planning. Second, opening the refugee camps and providing full citizenship rights to any humans willing to serve in combined military units. Third, emergency powers to bypass normal bureaucratic channels and implement new technologies without decades of safety testing." Prince Aldrich laughed bitterly. "You're asking us to revolutionize our entire civilization in 3 months. It's impossible." "It's necessary," Kira replied firmly. "The Guardian made it clear that incremental change won't save us. We either transform completely or we die a separate species." Duke Vex nodded slowly as he processed the strategic implications. The merchant guilds could handle the logistics of rapid population integration, but we'd need guarantees about property rights and trade regulations. Chaos benefits no one. "You'll have your guarantees," Kira promised, "but only if you commit fully to the alliance. Half measures will doom us all when the Zirathi arrive." The Palace AI interrupted with an urgent announcement. Long-range sensors detect Zirathi advanced scouts approaching the outer system. Estimated arrival at populated worlds, 73 days. Imperial defensive protocols are now in effect. The reality of their situation hit the assembled nobles like a physical blow. Their political maneuvering and ancient prejudices suddenly seemed trivial, compared to the existential threat bearing down on them. Even Prince Aldrich's military confidence wavered as he studied the scout ship specifications. "Very well," Duke Vex said after a long moment of calculation. "The merchant houses will support your integration proposal. But we want formal representation in the new government structure." Lady Corvina checked her datapad as intelligence reports flooded in from across the system. "The Intelligence Guild agrees to cooperation, but we need access to human technological databases immediately. Their encryption methods could be crucial for coordinating resistance activities." One by one, the noble houses declared their support, not from conviction but from cold pragmatism. The Zirathi threat was too overwhelming to face with anything less than total unity. Prince Aldrich stood alone as his political support evaporated, his dreams of military rule crumbling in the face of necessity. "You're all fools if you think this mongrel can save us. But I swear by the blood of our ancestors that I'll fight beside you when the aliens come." Kira felt the weight of leadership settling on her shoulders as the palace systems officially transferred Imperial authority to her genetic signature. She had gained the throne she never wanted, but now she had to prove worthy of it by achieving the impossible, uniting two species that had forgotten how to trust each other before their common enemy arrived to destroy them both. The transformation of the Valorian Empire began immediately, but not without resistance from unexpected quarters. As Kira established her war council in the palace's ancient strategic center, reports flooded in from across the system about civil unrest, religious protests, and outright sabotage from conservative factions who preferred extinction to integration with human refugees. The refugee camps themselves presented their own challenges. After decades of second-class treatment, many humans viewed Kira's offers of citizenship and military integration with deep suspicion. Dr. Sarah Chun, leader of the Human Colonial Council and coincidentally Kira's distant cousin, arrived at the palace with demands that went far beyond simple alliance. "Your people treated us like contamination for 30 years, Dr. Chun stated bluntly during their first meeting. "Now you want our help because you're desperate. What guarantees do we have that you won't abandon us again once the crisis passes?" Kira studied the older woman's weathered features, seeing echoes of her own mixed heritage reflected back. "None, beyond my word and the fact that we'll all be dead if we don't work together. The Guardian showed me things about our shared history that both our peoples have forgotten. We were stronger together." Dr. Chun activated a portable holographic projector, displaying technical specifications that made even the Valorian engineers gasp. "We've spent decades developing these technologies in secret, using equipment your people discarded as worthless. Quantum tunneling drives, neural interface weapons, adaptive armor systems that respond to biological threats. The human innovations were staggering in their creativity and desperation, forced to work with limited resources. Human scientists had developed solutions that bypassed traditional technological limitations entirely. Their quantum drives could move ships faster than anything in the Valorian fleet, while their neural weapons could potentially turn Zirathi bioships against their own crews. Admiral Thane examined the technical readouts with growing excitement. "These neural interface systems, they could allow our pilots to control multiple ships simultaneously. The force multiplication would be extraordinary. But the technology requires genetic modifications that only humans can safely undergo," Dr. Chun explained. "Your people's immune systems reject the neural implants. However, individuals with mixed heritage like your new empress show compatibility with both systems." The implications were staggering. Kira's unique genetics made her not just a political bridge between species, but a literal interface between their technologies. She could command both human quantum drives and Valorian shield systems simultaneously, creating tactical possibilities that neither species could achieve alone. Over the following weeks, Integration proceeded with chaotic intensity. Human engineers worked alongside Valorian manufacturers to produce hybrid warships that incorporated the best of both technologies. The new vessels were smaller and faster than traditional Valorian dreadnoughts, but carried firepower that could penetrate Zirathi. Bio-armor. The first major test came when Prince Aldrich's military units conducted joint exercises with newly integrated human volunteers. The cultural clash was immediate and violent, with Valorian officers struggling to adapt to human tactical flexibility while human soldiers chafed under Valorian military hierarchy. Commander Torres, a former human resistance leader, confronted Kira after a particularly disastrous training session that ended with 3 soldiers in the medical bay. Your prince thinks war is about perfect formations and following orders without question. Our people learned to fight dirty because that's the only way we could survive. Kira found herself mediating conflicts that went beyond simple military doctrine. Valorian concepts of honor and formal combat protocols directly contradicted human guerrilla tactics developed during decades of desperate resistance. Both approaches had merit, but combining them required fundamental changes to how each species understood warfare. The breakthrough came when she implemented rotating command structures that forced officers from both species to serve under each other's leadership. Valorian Admiral Thane learned to appreciate human improvisation during a simulated asteroid field battle, while human Commander Torres gained respect for Valorian strategic planning during complex fleet maneuvers. But their greatest challenge wasn't military integration, it was the growing religious movement that declared the Zirathi invasion to be divine punishment for violating the Bloodline laws. High Priest Valdris had emerged as leader of the Orthodox faction, claiming that Kira's rule represented an abomination that would bring destruction upon all their people. The priest's followers began sabotaging integration efforts, viewing human technology as contamination that weakened Valorian spiritual purity. They bombed manufacturing facilities, assassinated cooperative officials, and spread propaganda that portrayed the Alliance as betrayal of their ancestors' sacrifices. The gods demand purity, Valdris declared during a massive rally in the capital's central plaza. This false empress leads us toward damnation through mixing what should remain separate. Better to die pure than live corrupted. Kira faced the terrible choice of using force against her own people or allowing the resistance to undermine their defense preparations. The timetable was relentless. Zirathi advance scouts had already reached the outer planets and were conducting detailed reconnaissance of defensive positions. The solution came from an unexpected source. Mother Seraphina, eldest of the palace's traditional keepers, revealed ancient texts that had been sealed away for millennia. The documents described the original alliance between humans and Valorians, showing that genetic mixing had been common before the exile and that the bloodline laws were relatively recent inventions. The priests speak of traditions they do not understand, Mother Seraphina explained as she displayed the recovered texts. Our peoples were one civilization before the Zirathi forced separation. The bloodline laws were emergency measures, not divine commandments. Armed with historical proof, Kara confronted High Priest Valdris in a public debate that was broadcast throughout the system. The priest's arguments crumbled as she demonstrated that his orthodox position was itself a deviation from true Valorian tradition. You speak of purity while ignoring our ancestors' wisdom, Kira declared before the assembled crowd. They knew that survival required adaptation. The Zirathi destroyed our original homeworld because we were too rigid to change. Will you make the same mistake here? The religious resistance collapsed as moderate priests abandoned Valdris's extremist position. More importantly, the historical revelations provided a cultural framework for integration that both species could accept. They weren't abandoning their identities but returning to their original unified heritage. As military integration accelerated, early warning stations detected the main Zirathi fleet dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. The invasion had begun 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Catching the Alliance before their preparations were complete, Kira stood in the Combined Operations Center. watching displays that showed hundreds of massive bioships moving toward the inner system. Each Zirathi vessel was the size of a city, carrying millions of converted slaves ready to overwhelm any defensive position through sheer numbers. "All forces to battle stations," she commanded, her voice carrying across communication channels to both human and Valorian units. "This is what we've prepared for. Show them that unity makes us stronger than the sum of our parts." The final test was about to begin, and failure meant not just death but the complete extinction of both species' capacity for free will. The first wave of Zirathi bioships moved through the system like a plague, their organic hulls pulsing with malevolent life as conversion pods prepared to transform entire worlds into slave colonies. Kira watched the tactical displays from the integrated command center, her hybrid neural interfaces allowing her to process data streams from both human, quantum sensors and Valorian deep space arrays. Simultaneously, the enemy fleet was even more terrifying than the Guardian's projections had suggested. Each bioship measured several kilometers in length, its living hull capable of regenerating damage that would cripple conventional vessels. Worse yet, the ships carried atmospheric processes that could transform planetary environments to suit Zirathi biology within days. "Initial contact in 4 hours," reported Commander Torres, now serving as Joint Tactical Coordinator. "They're moving faster than expected, using gravity wells to accelerate their approach. Our outer defense platforms won't have time to establish proper firing solutions." Admiral Thane studied the enemy formations with professional admiration and growing dread. "They're not following standard invasion protocols? Usually the Zirathi establish orbital bombardment positions and demand surrender. This time they're moving directly to conversion operations." Kira felt a chill of understanding as she accessed the Guardian's preserved memories. "They know about our alliance. Zirathi intelligence has been watching our integration efforts, and they're adapting their tactics. They want to stop us before we can prove that unified tactics work." The first engagement came at the asteroid mining station of Kepler-7, where a mixed crew of human and Valorian miners had refused evacuation orders. The hybrid defense platforms that protected the facility represented the Alliance's first real-world test of combined technologies. The Zirathi bioships approached with supreme confidence, their conversion beams charging to transform the station's population into compliant slaves. But when they fired, the beams encountered quantum interference fields that human engineers had developed to protect refugee ships. The conversion energy scattered harmlessly against barriers that pure Valorian technology could never have created simultaneously. The mining station's Valorian-built particle cannons opened fire, their targeting computers guided by human neural interfaces that allowed unprecedented accuracy. The bioship's regenerative hulls proved vulnerable to precisely targeted strikes that disrupted their biological control systems. "Target their neural clusters," Kira commanded across the communication networks. "Human scans show weak points in their organic armor that Valorian sensors can't detect." The battle at Kepler-7 became a template for resistance throughout the system. Human mobility and adaptability combined with Valorian firepower and durability created tactical possibilities that frustrated Zirathi expectations. But the cost was enormous for every enemy ship destroyed. The Alliance lost 3 defensive platforms. The real test came when the main Zirathi fleet reached the industrial world of Themis, home to both the largest human refugee camp and the primary Valorian manufacturing complex. Prince Aldrich commanded the defense fleet from the dreadnought Valorian Pride, his tactical instincts finally finding purpose in actual combat. "They're using conversion ships as shields," he reported as the enemy approached orbital bombardment range. "The bio-armor is too thick for our standard weapons to penetrate effectively." Dr. Chun's voice crackled over the communication link from the refugee camp below. "Deploy the neural disruptor missiles. If we can sever the connection between the Zirathi commanders and their slave crews, the ships should become uncontrolled." The neural disruptors were perhaps humanity's most desperate innovation, weapons that targeted biological control systems. rather than physical structures. They had never been tested against actual Zirathi technology, and deployment required modified, human pilots whose neural implants could guide the weapons through bioship defenses. Kira made the decision that would define her leadership. I'm taking personal command of the disruptor strike. My hybrid genetics allow me to interface with both guidance systems simultaneously. Empress, the risk is too great, Admiral Thane protested. If you're killed, the Alliance dies with you. If Themis falls, the Alliance dies anyway, she replied grimly. The neural interface requirements are too complex for anyone else to handle effectively. She transferred her consciousness into a modified fighter craft that combined human quantum drives with Valorian shield generators. The ship responded to her thoughts rather than manual controls, becoming an extension of her will as she dove toward the enemy formation, the Zirathi. Bioships detected her approach and responded with living weapons that sought to capture rather than destroy. Tentacle-like energy fields reached out to ensnare her craft, while conversion beams attempted to penetrate her ship's hybrid defenses. But Kira's unique genetics allowed her to perceive the enemy's biological networks in ways neither species could achieve alone. She could see the neural pathways that connected Zirathi commanders to their enslaved crews, identifying the precise points where disruption would cause maximum damage. The neural disruptor missiles launched in perfect sequence, each one guided by Kira's hybrid consciousness toward targets that pure human or pure Valorian sensors would have missed. The weapons penetrated bioship defenses and delivered their payloads directly into enemy control centers. The effect was immediate and devastating. Zirathi bioships suddenly turned on each other as enslaved crews broke free from their mental conditioning. Conversion beams that should have targeted planetary surfaces instead fired randomly into space or at nearby Zirathi vessels. "It's working," Commander Torres reported with amazement. "The enemy fleet is fragmenting. Bioships are breaking formation and attacking anything in range." But the Zirathi adapted quickly, as they always did. Emergency protocols activated throughout their fleet, severing connections to compromised ships while backup command systems took control of remaining vessels. Within minutes, half the enemy fleet had regained coherence and was advancing toward Themis with renewed determination. Kira's fighter craft shuddered as enemy fire finally overwhelmed her shields. She managed to reach the planetary defense grid before her ship's systems failed completely, but the cost of the neural interface strain was becoming apparent. Her hybrid genetics provided unique capabilities, but they also made her vulnerable to feedback effects that neither species had encountered before. "Medical teams to the landing bay," Dr. Chun commanded as Kira's craft crash-landed in the refugee camp. Neural interface overload can cause permanent brain damage. As medical teams worked to stabilize her condition, the battle for Themis continued with desperate intensity. The Alliance had proven that unified tactics could work against Zirathi technology, but they had also learned that their greatest strength, Kira's unique abilities, came with potentially fatal limitations. The enemy regrouped for a final assault on the planet's surface, their remaining bioships preparing conversion beams that would transform the entire population into slaves within hours. Prince Aldrich's fleet moved to intercept, but they were outnumbered 3-1 and running low on ammunition. In the refugee camp's medical bay, Kira struggled against unconsciousness as her neural implants slowly repaired themselves. She could feel the battle raging above through her connection to the Alliance's command networks. But her hybrid consciousness was too damaged to provide the precise coordination that their tactics required. The fate of both species now depended on whether human adaptability and Valorian determination could succeed without the genetic bridge that had made their unity possible. The final phase of the battle would determine not just survival, but whether the alliance Kira had forged could endure beyond her own limitations. With Kira unconscious in the medical bay, the Alliance faced its greatest test, learning to function as a unified force without the genetic bridge that had made their cooperation possible. Prince Aldrich found himself in overall command of the defense fleet, forced to coordinate with human officers whose tactical thinking still seemed chaotic and Unpredictable to his methodical military mind, the Zirathi took advantage of the command confusion, launching simultaneous attacks on 3 different worlds while their main fleet prepared to assault Themis directly. Their bioships had adapted to the neural disruptor weapons, developing organic shielding that made the missiles far less effective against their control systems. Commander Torres assumed tactical coordination for the human forces, her guerrilla warfare experience proving crucial as the enemy adapted to conventional defensive strategies. "They're learning too fast," she reported during an emergency strategy session. "Every tactic we use successfully gets countered within hours." Dr. Chun worked desperately in the medical facility, using hybrid technologies to repair the neural damage that threatened to permanently separate Kira from the Alliance's command networks. The genetic modifications that made her unique were also making her recovery incredibly complex, requiring treatments that combined human neural science with Valorian biological regeneration techniques. Her consciousness is fragmented across multiple interface channels, Dr. Ching explained to the assembled officers. The hybrid neural pathways allow unprecedented data processing, but they're also vulnerable to cascade failures that could leave her permanently catatonic. Admiral Thane studied tactical displays that showed enemy forces converging on the system's core worlds. "How long until she can resume command functions?" "Unknown. Her genetic structure is unlike anything in our medical databases. We're essentially performing experimental surgery on neural pathways that shouldn't exist." The immediate crisis came when Zirathi bioships reached the agricultural world of Demeter, threatening food supplies that sustained the entire alliance. The planet's defense consisted of hastily installed orbital platforms and a small, patrol fleet of hybrid warships that had never been tested in sustained combat. Captain Maria Santos, a human officer commanding the Valorian-built destroyer Harmony, found herself leading the defense against overwhelming odds. Her ship carried one of the new quantum torpedo systems that combined human guidance technology with Valorian explosive power, but she had only 12 shots against a fleet of 30 bioships. "All ships, implement dispersal pattern 7, she commanded, using human tactical flexibility to avoid the concentrated firepower that had destroyed previous defensive formations. "We can't match their numbers, but we can make them work for every kill." The hybrid tactics that Kira had developed proved their worth as human ships used quantum drives to strike from unexpected angles, while Valorian vessels provided covering fire with their superior weapons. But the cost was enormous. For every Zirathi bioship destroyed, the Alliance lost 2 defenders on Themis. Dr. Chun made a desperate decision that would either save Kira or kill her permanently. Using techniques developed during decades of refugee medical research, she began transferring parts of Kira's consciousness into the Alliance's command network itself, allowing her hybrid awareness to function even while her physical brain recovered. "It's never been attempted on this scale," she explained to Prince Aldrich as they monitored Kira's vital signs. "But her genetic modifications include quantum neural pathways that might allow distributed consciousness. She could become the living embodiment of the Alliance itself." The procedure was incredibly dangerous, requiring Kira's mind to spread across thousands of interface nodes simultaneously while maintaining coherent self-awareness. Success would give her unprecedented tactical control over Alliance forces, but failure would scatter her consciousness beyond any hope of recovery. As the neural transfer began, Kira's awareness suddenly expanded across the entire battlefield. She could perceive every ship, every weapon, every tactical decision through the Alliance's combined sensor networks. Her hybrid consciousness allowed her to process data streams from both human and Valorian sources simultaneously, creating a battlefield awareness that no individual mind should have been able to contain. "Contact established," she announced through the command networks, her voice now emanating from speakers throughout the Alliance fleet. "All units, prepare for a coordinated strike pattern Omega. We're going to show the Zirathi what unified command really means." The transformation was immediate and decisive. Alliance ships that had been fighting desperately separate battles suddenly operated with perfect coordination. Human quantum drives positioned Valorian heavy cruisers for optimal firing solutions while hybrid. Weapon systems targeted Zirathi bioships with unprecedented precision. Captain Santos watched in amazement as her tactical displays updated with targeting information that seemed to anticipate enemy movements. It's like having the Empress's mind directly connected to our weapon systems. The targeting solutions are perfect, but the distributed consciousness experiment came with unexpected costs. Kira's awareness of every battle meant she also experienced every death, every sacrifice made by Alliance personnel fighting impossible odds. The emotional weight of command multiplied exponentially when she could feel each loss as a personal failure. The Zirathi responded to the improved coordination by accelerating their conversion operations, attempting to transform captured populations faster than the Alliance could rescue them. Bioships that reached planetary surfaces immediately began atmospheric processing, turning breathable air into the toxic environment that Zirathi ground forces required on the mining world of Ceres. Human refugees and Valorian colonists worked together to resist conversion while Alliance forces fought to reach them. The planetary defense network had failed, leaving the population dependent on improvised weapons and desperate courage. Engineer James Park, working with Valorian technician Vera Thane, discovered that human industrial equipment could be modified to disrupt Zirathi biomachinery. Their conversion systems are vulnerable to quantum interference, he reported through increasingly unreliable communication channels. If we can coordinate resistance activities with orbital strikes, we might be able to prevent atmospheric conversion. Kira's distributed consciousness allowed her to coordinate ground resistance with fleet operations in ways that had never been possible before. She could guide orbital bombardments with pinpoint accuracy while simultaneously directing evacuation operations and resistance activities across multiple worlds. The turning point came when Alliance forces discovered that Zirathi bioships had a critical vulnerability. Their organic nature made them susceptible to viral attacks that targeted their biological control systems. Human computer specialists working with Valorian bioengineers developed digital viruses that could propagate through enemy fleet networks. "Deploy the viral weapons on my mark," Kira commanded, her consciousness tracking the optimal release points across the enemy formation. "Target their communication networks and watch their coordination collapse." The virus attack succeeded beyond their wildest hopes, causing Zirathi bioships to turn on each other as their control systems became corrupted. But victory came at a terrible price. The sustained neural strain was slowly killing Kira's physical body, even as her consciousness grew more powerful within the Alliance. Networks. Dr. Chun monitored vital signs that showed critical system failures throughout Kira's hybrid physiology. "She's burning out her neural pathways faster than we can repair them. Her consciousness might survive in the network, but her physical form is dying." The Alliance faced an impossible choice: allow Kira to die physically while her consciousness remained as their permanent command system, or find a way to bring her back to physical form and risk losing the unprecedented coordination that was winning the war. Zirathi reinforcements appeared at the edge of the system. The final decision about Kira's fate would determine not just the outcome of the current battle, but the future nature of the alliance between humans and Valorians. The arrival of the Zirathi main invasion fleet changed everything. Massive command vessels emerged from quantum space, each one the size of a moon and carrying billions of converted slaves from conquered civilizations. These were not merely bioships, but entire mobile worlds, equipped with planet-cracking weapons and conversion systems that could transform star systems within weeks. Kira's distributed consciousness reeled as she processed the scale of the threat through the Alliance's sensor networks. Her awareness, spread across thousands of interface nodes, suddenly felt microscopic compared to the vast intelligence directing the Zirathi armada. The enemy wasn't just technologically superior, they represented a collective mind that had been perfecting conquest for millions of years. "Pull back all forward units," she commanded through the communication networks, her voice now carrying harmonics that reflected both human and Valorian speech patterns. We can't fight them conventionally. Our only advantage is that they still think of us as separate species. Dr. Chun watched Kira's physical form deteriorate in the medical bay while her consciousness grew stronger within the Alliance networks. The hybrid genetics that made her unique were consuming themselves, breaking down cellular structures to power neural pathways that shouldn't exist in any biological organism. She has perhaps 6 hours of biological function remaining, Doctor. Chun reported to the War Council. After that, her consciousness will be permanently integrated into our command systems. She becomes something between a person and an artificial intelligence. Prince Aldrich struggled with the tactical implications. As Zerathi forces methodically destroyed outer system defenses, can she maintain command effectiveness in that state? Leading requires more than just data processing. Unknown. The transformation is unprecedented. She might retain full personality and judgment, or she could become a purely logical system optimized for military coordination. The answer came when Zerathi psychological warfare specialists began broadcasting conversion signals, designed to break Alliance morale. The transmissions carried mimetic weapons that exploited species-specific psychological vulnerabilities, attempting to turn humans and Valorians against each other by amplifying their deepest cultural fears. But Kira's hybrid consciousness proved immune to the psychological attacks, her unique perspective allowing her to recognize and counter the mimetic weapons before they could affect Alliance personnel. More importantly, she began broadcasting counter-signals that strengthened cooperation between species by highlighting their shared experiences of resistance and survival. The Zerathi don't understand unity based on choice rather than conversion, she explained to the Alliance commanders. They can corrupt pure human or pure Valorian psychology, but our hybrid culture is something they've never encountered before. Captain Santos, now commanding a combined task force of human and Valorian vessels, reported from the front lines where Alliance forces were conducting hit-and-run attacks against Zerathi supply lines. The enemy is adapting to our individual tactics, but they're having trouble with integrated strategies that shift between human and Valorian approaches mid-battle. The key insight came when Kira analyzed patterns in Zerathi fleet movements through her expanded awareness. The enemy collective intelligence was incredibly sophisticated, but it was also predictable because it had optimized itself for conquest rather than adaptation. They had faced thousands of species, but always as isolated civilizations fighting desperately for survival. They're preparing for a simultaneous assault on all core worlds, she announced as tactical projections updated across Alliance command centers. But their coordination assumes we'll defend each planet independently. They have no contingency for distributed resistance that treats the entire system as a single battlefield. Admiral Thane understood immediately. You're proposing we abandon fixed defensive positions entirely. Turn the whole system into a mobile battleground where our quantum drives give us strategic advantage. More than that, we're going to use their own collective intelligence against them. The Zerathi network assumes logical responses based on survival instincts. They can't predict choices based on sacrifice for abstract principles. The final gambit required Kira to transfer even more of her consciousness into the Alliance networks, accepting the certainty of physical death in exchange for the capability to coordinate system-wide operations. Her awareness would become the living embodiment of human Valorian unity, but she would cease to exist as an individual person. Do it, she commanded before anyone could object. The Alliance needs to survive more than I do. Dr. Chen activated the full neural transfer protocol, watching as Kira's physical form became an empty shell while her consciousness expanded throughout the Alliance's technological infrastructure. She became the nerve system of their civilization, able to coordinate millions of individual actions into a unified response to the Zerathi invasion. The transformation allowed for tactics that defied conventional military logic. Alliance forces began operating as a true collective, with human creativity and Valorian discipline merging into something neither species could achieve alone. Ships sacrificed themselves not from desperation but as calculated moves in a system-wide strategy that treated individual losses as acceptable costs for overall victory. The Zirathi collective intelligence found itself fighting an enemy that made no logical sense. Alliance forces would abandon valuable positions without apparent reason, only to use the retreats to lure enemy ships into carefully prepared ambush. Human pilots would sacrifice their lives to position Valorian heavy weapons for optimal firing solutions, while Valorian crews would perform impossible maneuvers to protect human evacuation ships. "They're fighting like a single organism," reported Zirathi tactical analysts to their collective commanders. "But their coordination patterns don't match any known conversion protocols? The level of voluntary sacrifice is unprecedented." The breakthrough came when Alliance scientists, coordinated by Kira's distributed consciousness, discovered that Zirathi bioships could be turned into weapons against their own fleet. The conversion signals that enslaved other species could be reverse-engineered to target Zirathi control systems themselves. "Target the command vessels," Kira directed through every communication channel simultaneously. "Their collective intelligence requires physical nodes to maintain coherence. Destroy enough command ships and their entire network will fragment." The final battle took place in the space around the gas giant Kronos, where the largest Zirathi command vessel had positioned itself to coordinate the invasion's final phase. Alliance forces, now operating with perfect unity under Kira's distributed command, converged on the massive bioship from every direction simultaneously. Prince Aldrich led the main assault force, his military instincts finally finding perfect expression as part of a larger tactical intelligence. Commander Torres coordinated guerrilla strikes that harassed enemy formations, while Admiral Thane's heavy cruisers delivered devastating firepower at precisely calculated moments. The Zirathi command vessel was ultimately destroyed not by superior weapons, but by the simple human concept of self-sacrifice elevated to the level of military strategy. Alliance pilots deliberately crashed their ships into critical points on the bioship's hull, while ground forces fought their way into the vessel's organic corridors to plant charges that would sever its connection to the collective intelligence network. As the command vessel died, taking with it the coordination that held the invasion fleet together, Kira's consciousness faced a choice that would define the future of both species. She could maintain her distributed existence, becoming a permanent guardian intelligence that would protect the Alliance forever, or she could attempt to return to physical form and risk losing the unity she had created. In the end, she chose a third option that neither species had considered. Working with Dr. Chun and the Alliance's best scientists, she began developing a new form of existence that would allow her consciousness to transition between distributed network awareness and physical embodiment as circumstances required. "The Alliance doesn't need a permanent ruler," she declared as her new hybrid form stabilized. "It needs the capability to unify completely when necessary while maintaining individual freedom during peacetime." The Zirathi invasion was defeated. But more importantly, the Alliance had discovered something that would reshape galactic civilization. They had proven that voluntary cooperation based on mutual respect and shared sacrifice was more powerful than any form of forced unity, creating a new model for interspecies relations that would spread throughout the galaxy. Kira emerged from the transformation as something unprecedented, a bridge between biological and technological existence that embodied the best aspects of both human and Valorian nature. She had become the living symbol of what could be achieved when different peoples chose to unite not from fear or necessity, but from recognition of their greater potential together. The Bloodline Chamber had chosen well. The Guardian's ancient wisdom had identified not just a ruler, but a catalyst for evolution that would guide both species toward a future none of them could have imagined alone.